So at the top of your paper, this is still Unit 1. If you want to write down Unit 1 or U1, this is Topic 3, Linear Inverse. So on your paper yesterday, it was graphing. Today is algebraically. It just means using math. Okay? Today is September 2nd. Yesterday, I hope you're listening. Yesterday, I made a mistake. I told you your quiz was on September 8th. It's actually the next day, September 9th. Okay? So, if you write stuff in an agenda or a planner, make sure you change it to September 9th. The first thing I have to remember is that if anywhere in my directions it says the word inverse, what should my brain be thinking right away? Switch. Don't you dare say opposite. It is not the same thing. Switch. What am I switching? X and Y. Okay? So I'm switching X and Y. Even if it's a graph, I switch. Even if it's algebra, I switch. Okay? So let's start simple. We will write down some steps on the side as we go through our problems. So example number 1, we will say y equals 2x minus 7. My directions would say find the inverse. So step number 1, the minute I see the word inverse, I am going to switch X and Y. I am literally just taking X and taking Y and changing positions. No numbers move, okay? So instead of Y equals, it's going to say X equals. And now instead of 2X, it's going to say 2Y minus 7. So none of my numbers move, okay? Now, I'm trying to do step number 2, which would be solve for y. When I solve, that means I want it to say y equals something. So if I want to get this y all by itself, this is very similar to our solving warm-up, what am I going to get rid of first? The negative 7. How do I get rid of the negative 7? We're going to add it to both sides. Do you know what x plus 7 is?
7x.
No, okay, so listen. If I have this, 7x, how do you actually read that? What does that mean? 7 times x. Is that what I'm doing? Am I doing multiplication? I'm just adding. So if I don't know what x plus 7 is, I write it down. X plus 7 equals, what's left over? 2y. How do I get y all by itself? Divide by 2. Pay attention. I'm going to divide everything individually by 2. No big fractions. That's going to confuse us later. Okay? So I have x over 2 plus, can 7 be divided by 2? Not pretty. Equals, what's it going to equal? Y. Okay? Now here's our last step. Our last step, number 3, is we have to make the answer inverse. And what I mean by that is to tell me an equation's an inverse, you have to put an itty-bitty negative 1 on it. So let me show you what this answer will look like. Okay? So this will say y equals 1/2 x. These are the exact same thing. All I did is move my x to the side. Okay? That's all I did. I put my x on the side instead of on the top. Plus 7/2. Now, how do I tell somebody this is an inverse? This y has to have an itty-bitty negative 1. This negative 1 means inverse. And that would be my answer. Okay? We'll go do 2 more. So example number 2. f of x equals negative 5 plus 4x divided by 3. What does f of x really mean? Y. That's all f of x means right here. This f of x is the same thing as y. It's my function. So, find the inverse. Oop, I heard the word inverse. What should my brain be thinking? Switch what? X and y. So instead of y equals, I'm going to write x equals negative 5 plus 4, and instead of 4x, I have 4y all over 3. Who can read this to me correctly? Who can read this fraction part to me using very good math terms? Somebody try. Samantha, give it a try. Try. Just try. Negative 5. Don't say over. What word do I want instead of over? Divide by. Here's why. Thank you for trying. Because now I know how to undo it, right? If this says divide by 3, how do I undo that? You multiply by 3. So I'm going to multiply the right side by 3, and I'm going to multiply the left side by 3. So on the left side, I have 3x equals. Now let's see who really knows what we're doing. What was the point of multiplying the right side by 3? To cancel my 3 in the denominator, so they cancel. So all that's left over is negative 5 plus 4y. I'm trying to get y by itself, so what will my next step be? Add 5 to both sides. Very good. Do I know what 3x plus 5 is? No, so I just write it. 3x plus 5 equals 4y. What's my next step? Divide every single thing by 4. No big fraction. Okay? So I have 3 over 4 with my little x to the side, plus 5/4 equals y. And how do I tell somebody this is an inverse? With a negative 1. I want to show you something though, okay? If I started this problem, did I start this problem with the letter y? No, I started with f of x. So we're going to actually write our problem with f of x, okay? So I'm going to write f of x instead of y equals 3/4 x plus 5/4. Same rule applies. How do I tell somebody this is the inverse? This little f of x has to have a negative 1. Okay? Would we like to do one more? Yes? A fraction one again?
I still don't get it.
What don't you get?
Why are those like 4s there? That's the
Denominator?
denominator.
So do you understand why we divided by 4?
No, not really.
Okay. So we're trying to get y all by itself, correct?
Yeah.
So what does 4y really mean?
4 times y.
4 times y. We have to undo that. So how do you undo times? By dividing, right? So I have to divide everything by 4. Can 3 be divided by 4?
No.
So it stays.
Okay.
Can 5 be divided by 4?
No.
So it stays.
Okay, what if you can divide it by
Then you divide it. So what if it said 8 divided by 4?
Yeah.
Would I leave 8 over 4, or what would I turn it into?
Just 2.
It would turn into a 2. Okay? Okay. Any other questions before we try another one? Thank you for asking questions. Okay. Here we go. Ready? We'll do this one. F of x equals 3/2 x minus 1. Okay? On your paper, rewrite your equation because your first step is to do what? switch your x and y. So on your paper, write it and then look up to see if we have the same thing. Okay. Do we have the same thing? Okay. What's my next thing going to be? James, what do you think I'm going to do next?
I don't know.
Yes, you do. We're trying to get y by itself. What's the furthest thing away from y I need to get rid of?
The 1.
Okay, so if this says -1, how do I get rid of it? To both sides, right?
Yeah.
See? You knew. What's going to be on the left side, Zoe? Do you know what x plus 1 is? It's just x plus 1. Equals 3/2 y. Oh, I see a fraction and I don't like fractions. So how do we get rid of that fraction? What does this really say?
Divide by 2.
It says 3 divide by 2. So how do I undo dividing by 2? Multiply. I hope you're paying attention. I have to multiply everything by 2. Every single thing. So what is 2 times x? 2x. What is 1 times 2? 2 equals what's left over on the right side. What happened to my 2? It got canceled out. That was the whole point of doing this, to cancel it out. So I get a 3y. Okay? What's my next step going to be? Divide by what? Divide by 3 on every single one of them. Can 2 be divided by 3? So I keep it 2/3 with my x to the side. Oops, again, can 2 be divided by 3?
No.
So I keep it. Equals my y. Did I start with y or did I start with f of x? So let's rewrite our final answer. F of x equals 2/3 x plus 2/3. Why would I get -2 or 3 points on that answer? The -1 needs to be in there. Very good. Okay. How come? What does this -1 tell us? It's inverse. If you don't tell me that it's a -1, I have no idea it's the inverse. Okay. So you got to put the -1 on there if it asks for the inverse.
How did that 3/2 turn into a wait, what did it turn into? A 2?
It didn't turn into a 2. This says 3 divide by 2. How do I undo dividing by 2? You multiply by 2, which is what we did.
So it's 2 times 2.
No. So what this really means is 3 divided by 2 times 2. What is 3 times 2? What is 6 divided by 2? 3. And we can do that in our head because what is 2 divided by 2? No.
My bad. 2 divided by 2
Is 1. This right here is 1, right? So then 3 times 1 is 3. It works every time. Okay? All right, at the front desk, you should have picked up this paper. I don't care what number you start on. If number 1 looks difficult, then skip it and come back to it, okay? You cannot skip every fraction problem because I guarantee you right now there are probably 3 fraction problems on your quiz and 3 fraction problems on your test, okay? You can't be scared of fractions in here. If you don't know how to do it, then ask. This might not give you enough room. You're welcome to do it in your spiral. Okay? You can do it wherever you want. If you don't have enough room, then get it done in your spiral for me. Remember, our quiz is on Thursday, so in 1 week.